right, we're just going to go for it. Ah! Put this to be down. All right. All right, we are live now. This is supposed to be about the labor. Sean hopefully will be joining me in a few minutes, but I'm your host, Kirby O'Connor, talking about the Vikings 25 to 10 victory? Question mark? I do not. I don't remember it exactly. It is, oh god, 28 to 10. There we go. I'm just dumb. Good win. All right. Pull up the comments here. Hopefully we'll get some shatters in. Open browser. Go restream chat. All right. 28 to 10 victory at the New York Giants. A big one for the Vikings after last week's loss to the Chicago Bears. Really needed this victory. Especially needed a good performance from Kirk Cousins and the offense. Huge game from Cousins, especially with his woes so far this season. I know New York is going to be one that's kind of pushed off as like, it's New York. It's not. They're not that good. But I think New York is better than the other two teams that we've beat handily this year, the Oakland Raiders and the Atlanta Falcons, although I speak maybe a little too quickly, as the Falcons took down the Chicago Bears today in London. Oh my God, I just looked at the Atlanta-Houston score. Atlanta lost 32 to 53 to Houston. So that Atlanta defense is not good by any means. But the Vikings came out and they played the way they needed to today. I think they might have assuaged some doubts, especially after a week that was full of speculation of Stephon Diggs wanting out. Diggs didn't light up the scoreboard too much. Certainly didn't set the world on fire by any means, but he caught a couple passes, 3 passes for 44 yards. Nothing amazing, but nothing not too bad. Definitely, Skull, bud. Skull, we're back on that winning train. I think Diggs did a lot to assuage some doubts in this game. He showed up and he played well. Gave Cousins a high five at the end of the game when he got his big catch, and definitely just looked like he wanted to be there. But the man of the day, of course, was Adam Thielen with 7 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns as far as receivers go. But I think Diggs realizes that Diggs is a winner. Diggs wants to win games. I don't think he cares as much about his individual stats as he does about winning the games. And Kirk Cousins and the Vikings were able to do that today. We respond to my dad. He's asking if Mike Evans played. He did. He got targeted 3 times, no catches. But just to start at the beginning of the game, break it down. Vikings come out with a 62-yard, 6-minute and 14-second drive and a field goal by Dan Bailey. Kind of set the tone as a game where the Vikings were going to control the ball, control the clock. Follow that by a Giants punt, and then the first touchdown to Adam Thielen that started on the Vikings' own 2. There was some. I thought Cook could have ripped off a huge play on that first play, but Jabril Peppers made a really nice play. Jabril Peppers is a dang good player for the New York Giants out of that defensive backfield. But a long drive, but only 5:46. Actually took less time than the other one. But a couple of explosive plays. Adam Thielen for 10 yards, Cook for 15 yards. Olabisi Johnson for 23 yards. BC was all over the field again today, catching passes, 4 passes, 43 yards. Which, like, when you say it about Diggs, it's not a huge deal. But when it's coming from BC, who's a 7th-round receiver, that's a big game for him. And they cap it off with that. Alexander Madison ran for 19 yards to get it to the 2-yard line. Alexander Madison was used pretty sparingly today, but he was used, I think, effectively. We actually saw more of Amir Abdullah than we saw of Alexander Madison. But when they chose to use Madison, Madison did his job and got the yards he could. And I love Madison. Really has a downhill running style. You kind of look at Cook. He's patient behind the line. He kind of shimmies and shakes, and then he picks his spot and makes his cut. But Alexander Madison is ready to go and ready to go downhill at the line, and I love that about him. But yeah, I'm just gonna start. I don't know if Sean's gonna join me, so I'm just gonna go down my show notes and talk about the day, talk about the game. Kirk Cousins looked good. I thought they did an excellent job of getting him outside of the pocket, play actions, rolls. That's where he seems to do his most damage because I think it kind of throws the defense off. It gives them a second. As long as you set the edges and Cousins can get out there, it gives them some time to. The defense kind of has to freeze and watch, and then they react a little bit. But also just a lot of those intermediate, easy kind of routes where Thielen and Diggs do exceptionally well running those crossing routes. I thought they set Cousins up for a lot of success early and got him into a rhythm. And then he was just putting the ball on the receivers. I don't know many where he just missed. And he re-upped that connection with Thielen. I'd love to see more play action. It was pretty obvious that the Giants were going to stop the run right away. Right out of the gate, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to stop Dalvin Cook from running the ball. Of course, they could only stop him for so long because of time of possession. And I think the Giants' defense was gassed at a certain point. But I think Kevin Stefanski and Gary Kubiak set Kirk Cousins up to succeed in this game, and Cousins did his job to succeed. Dalvin Cook, once again, was the man for the Minnesota Vikings. Let's see. I think, is the game book up for this? It is. Okay, download game book. Let's look at this. Dalvin Cook. Oh, Kirk Cousins' final line, 22 for 27, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns along a 44. Quarterback rating of 138.6. That's very good. Against the Giants defense, that's not amazing, but not bad. I'd say they're about an average NFL defense. Dalvin Cook ends the day 21 rushing attempts for 132 yards along of 41. But most importantly, he catches 6 passes for 86 yards and a long of 24. So combined, he I think had his career high of 218 total yards on offense, which is excellent. I think the Vikings are moving into the modern era with that a little bit because they have a back who they can use on 3 downs and he can catch passes. That's an excellent thing to have in your back pocket. It's really hard to account for on the defense. To watch, Thielen, Diggs, even Rudolph, now Irv Smith, and then all of a sudden you've got Dalvin Cook out of the backfield. You got to watch all of them. It's really, really hard to contain when they're on form. The one play that Cook had that was a negative was he fumbled within the 5-yard line. Of course, it turned out okay. It was a heck of a play by Jabril Peppers to catch Cook before the end zone and then poke the ball out. But most importantly, I think the defense turned around and made it a positive by getting a safety, getting the ball back, and getting the chance. Dalvin Cook is the best running back in the game. I would have to agree. I think Saquon Barkley, when healthy, can challenge that, but Dalvin Cook is right now the most complete back, I think, in the NFL. And like I said, his style is very much like the one cut back, or like the kind of one cut back, But then once he's catching the ball, once he's in space, he's a little bit more of a. He's got a lot of shiftiness to him, so he can change directions. He's just an exceptional athlete, and I'm really glad we're finally seeing him fully healthy and running at the defenses. It was obvious last year that he was hampered by his hamstring, and that's pretty common after an ACL injury because it's hard to get those leg muscles fully in shape until you're ready to roll. And ACLs take a really long time, and you want to be back for the next season. But we're really seeing Dalvin Cook come into his own and really pick up where he left off in his rookie season. But even better because he's been able to sit there and watch the NFL game. He knows a little bit more. He's got that IQ. Like I said, Alexander Madison was excellent in limited appearances. He ends the game with 7 runs for 52 yards and a long of 19. I love Madison. I think he's got a great running style. I think he's very much the downhill, the change of pace back for Dalvin Cook, a la Matt Asiata, but Madison's got a lot more pop, a lot more big playability than Asiata ever had. BC Johnson, I already said, made great plays. Diggs only had 4 receptions for 44 yards. Kind of covered that already. Oh, this is one that I love too. I love when players taunt. I love when players taunt and they're down big. It's funny to me when that happens because I think the Giants were down 28 yards to carry. Yeah, 8 yards to carry for Madison. That's like where you want your spellback to be. And Abdullah was also at 8 yards to carry. He carried 3 times for 24 yards, which is interesting because I wanted Mike Boone as the third down running or the third back out of the backfield, but Abdullah did a very nice job today as well. Not only carrying the ball, but he also returned a kick back to like the 30, or 30 or more, which is what you're looking for there. But back to the thing about taunting, I think we were up 25 to 10. And the Giants made, I think they either sacked Kirk Cousins or they stopped Dalvin Cook for like no gain, and the defensive lineman was like dancing all around. He was shimmying and shaking. He was like, "Oh, I'm so good," but you're down by 15 points, and then we got the first down, and it didn't really matter that he stopped the play. And I get it. You wanna stay fired up. You want to stay in the game, but I really love when defensive players try to like taunt and like celebrate when they're down big because it's so dumb to me. It's so dumb. I thought the defense played really well again today, bending, not breaking, which is kind of the trademark of the Zimmer defense. Especially today's game felt a lot like 2017 to me, actually, because there was that middle of the season where we went on a run where we were just every game felt like it was a little bit tough, like it was close, but the final score doesn't look that way. And I think that's kind of what today felt like. It certainly felt like it felt like the Giants were in it for 3.5, almost 4 quarters. But really, it was just a shutdown, drag out fight. So I think this felt very much like 2017. And the defense felt like the 2017 defense. The only thing I'll say about the defense. They got to the red zone a lot. We didn't allow a lot of touchdowns. We stopped them for field goals. We got sacks. Linval Joseph got a penalty that set them up for the possibility of a touchdown. And then we turned around and we shut them down for just a field goal. Wasted about 3 minutes off the clock there. Tons of sacks for the game. I'll look at what the overall on defense was. Sacks. Daniel Hunter with 2 sacks. Denebo with 1 sack, his first career sack. Everson Griffin with 1 sack to bring him to 69.5 sacks on his career. Almost so nice. Almost so nice. But I thought the defense played really, really well outside of some penalties. Trey Waynes got flagged for defensive pass interference on one that Mike Zimmer challenged, and I don't blame Zimmer on challenging it at all because Anthony Barr looked like Lawrence Taylor. I don't know if I'd go that far, but Anthony Barr looked certainly worth the contract we're paying him. He looked like the leader of that defense, and that's what you really need out of Anthony Barr. But going back to that pass interference play, Waynes obviously got there early, and he put his hands on it. But it wasn't after the receiver put his hands on him, on Waynes, and then the receiver wraps around Waynes and pulls him in, so it looks like more of a penalty. It's pretty obvious that the receiver isn't really trying to go to the ball, and he's actually impeded his own progress by pulling the defensive player into him. So I don't know how you can throw the flag there and call it defensive pass interference, and then when you look at it, I get why it's not overturned, because it's not definitive necessarily, but I really don't understand why the offensive players are given so much leeway on stuff like that. And then later in the drive, Xavier Rhodes gets a penalty for illegal contact. Well, the wide receiver's running into him. The wide receiver initiates all the contact, and it's past the 5 yards. That shouldn't be illegal contact on the defender because the wide receiver is the one running into him. The wide receiver should have some sort of obligation to stay out of the defender's way as much as the defender has to stay out of the wide receiver's way. But I understand the calls. They didn't come back to bite us. It's not that big of a deal. Anthony Harris got another big illegal contact call, I think, on a third down to give them life. Rhodes needs to be replaced with Hughes. I don't know if I would go that far. Rhodes definitely looked not amazing today. I think he needs to play with a little more incentive, because the thing about Rhodes is when he's there and he's playing against a big name and he's he knows everybody's going to be watching him. He shows up and he does amazing things. And Mike Hughes played really well today. Mike Hughes had his best game of the season today, and he's been hampered with some, I assume, hamstring injuries after the ACL last year. But Mike Hughes had his best game of the season today, I'll give you that. But Rhodes has the ability to play like an all-pro. He has the ability to shut down the likes of Julio Jones and Odell Beckham Jr., the best receivers in the game. But I think when he isn't incentivized enough to play hard, he doesn't play hard enough. And I think another part of the problem is Anthony Harris looked bad today. Anthony Harris looked very bad for the most part in the game. He did have a nice pass breakup on Ingram towards the end of the game. But Anthony Harris normally doesn't blow coverages. But he looked... apparently he had a sore quad last week in Chicago. But this was... He just looked a step slow. And not that Rhodes should need that extra help over the top, but he does. I mean, that's the Zimmer defense is... the cornerback plays aggressive, and the safety, cleans things up for him. And it just... He got exploited a few times on stuff like that. It's just between the two of them, they need to figure it out. And Rhodes is kind of the butt of that whole thing because he's the obvious one. And I mean, I don't like the fact that he just goes off for random phantom injuries. I don't think he was actually hurt in the first quarter. He just got mixed up with Smith a little bit. But Rhodes is an interesting one. I think... it's going to be regretted in a few years. If we have to keep Rhodes and let Waynes go, I think that's going to be regretted in a few years when we could have had Waynes. Trey Waynes is an excellent player. Probably better than Xavier Rhodes right now. Special teams, I thought Dan Bailey looked good. He was 4 for 4 on field goals. I didn't miss an extra point. Looked great. Marcus Sherrills played it smart at the end of the half. He has a tendency to let things go inside the 10, which is fine because most of the time those end up as touchbacks. But at the end of the half, when he gave Kirk Cousins the chance at a shot down the field, that was a very smart play. He knew how much time he had. He knew how much time the ball was in the air, and he got out of bounds with that 1 second left. It's amazing. It's great to have Sherrills back on the team. Really glad that he's not in New Orleans. Colquitt looked decent. I think he outkicked his coverage maybe one time, but for the most part looked excellent. I can pull up his stats here. He didn't punt much. What? Oh yeah, he only punted one time. One time for 57 yards. I guess that wasn't too bad. Net of 40. So it was a return of 17. So, but I mean, that's kind of tough. Um, I'm also a big Trey Waynes fan. I think it's going to be tough if they don't get Waynes locked down for long term. Um, coverage on kick returns was a little iffy. The one touchdown we gave up was essentially because they got in great field position because of the kick return, and they just kind of rolled right down in a few plays and scored. I was worried Zimmer was going to play soft in the fourth because there's no, it's kind of tough to keep playing aggressive sometimes, especially when you got those big leads. I thought he might have decided to play soft in the fourth, but he didn't. Definitely kept the pressure on. We shut him down. We got the win. Dan Bailey was perfect. Yep, 4 for 4, no missed extra points. Dan Bailey had a great day. I think days like this are really build confidence for a kicker. They certainly, Dan Bailey was the most accurate kicker in NFL history for a while there, and he hopefully can be the same. Do the same thing now. Pass interference challenges are interesting to me. I understand why neither of the challenges that were against pass interference were overturned, but I don't like it. I don't like pass interference being able to be challenged. Big news in the division, though. The Oakland Raiders held on to beat the Chicago Bears. That's huge. That keeps the NFC North pretty much wide open, and depending on what happens, Green Bay and Dallas today, it really could make a huge difference in the standings of the NFC North. I don't think, as of this moment in time, I don't think there is a clear cut winner in the North. Especially if the Packers lose today, they drop to 3-2. If the Lions lose again, they'll drop to the bottom of the division, and it'll be a three-way tie at the top, with games still to play between all three of those teams. Obviously, it's going to be kind of fun. End of the year, see what happens. I think there's a good chance that the Vikings can still sneak into the wild card regardless, especially if they end, if they roll here and they win the next three, which I think they've got a good chance to. At 6-2, they've got a tough rest of the schedule. Let's say they win 3 more games at 9-7. I don't know if they make a wild card then, depending on how strong the rest of the NFC is. But if they can pull out 10-6, they could challenge for the division or even that wild card spot. It's conceivable. It's conceivable that the NFC North ends with 3 teams. It's conceivable they either end with 3 teams in the playoffs, or they end with 1 team in the playoffs and the other 2 out of the wild card because they beat up on each other so bad. Let me see. Detroit. Detroit has where are they? 11-5 would be excellent. I don't know if we have 11-5 in us, only because of we have a tough second half schedule. But this run right here, starting with the Giants and the next 3 weeks before we go to Kansas City, those are big ones. And even Kansas City is beatable on any given day. That's the beautiful thing about the NFL. Anybody's beatable on any given day. But we really need to build up Kirk Cousins and the offense's confidence. And I think today goes a long way in that. The Eagles next week will be huge. I'll be at that game. Gee, thanks. Your quarterback sucks. Real great troll. Very original. He just went for 302 touchdowns and a 140 almost rating. So great job. But I think after today's game, rolling all the way into into Kansas City, there's a good chance that you can win all 4 of those games. And then even after that, Kansas City's beatable, Dallas is beatable, Denver you should win. You got the bye week. Seattle's going to be tough on the road, but it's winnable. Detroit, that one's always the kind of a crapshoot. It's the Giants who just won 2 games in a row, no big deal. I'm not saying that it's like huge, but like he's not. He's an average NFL quarterback. Chargers, that one's going to be tough. And then you got Green Bay and Chicago at home, and you should win 1 out of those 2, hopefully. So 11-5 is doable, but I think it's more likely we see 9-7 or 10-6, which is unfortunate. But I think we're looking at wild card spot at this point, or depending on how the rest of the North shakes out, it could be win the North, but it's going to be tough. So yeah, I mean that's the where we sit at right now. Sorry, Sean couldn't be here. I don't know where he is. If he's got a thing going on, but next week playing at Philadelphia at home, I'll be at the game, so I won't be doing post game. I won't be tweeting. I won't be covering the game at all. I will be enjoying it, hopefully enjoying it. If not, I'll be pounding $9 Coors Light and trying not to think about it. Not 84 million. Team Def will be looking for better Super Bowl team besides him. Besides him and the offensive line, I'll give you that. Those are 2 weaknesses. I think the offensive line is an average offensive line, and I think he's an average quarterback in most games. But in big games, he shows up as below average often. And 84 million, he's certainly not worth. So, it's not good. Certainly, the value is not there. Check out your channel. I will pop into it and check it out personally. But yeah, that's all I got for today. Keep an eye on the Dallas Green Bay game because that one's huge for the division, and then keep an eye on Detroit. And I just looked it up, and I'm real dumb. Detroit and is Detroit not playing this week? Is Detroit on bye? Oh, they might be. Or am I just dumb? I might be dumb. Looks like Detroit's not playing this week. So Dallas and Green Bay is the one to watch. The only other thing I have to say is Teddy Bridgewater for the New Orleans Saints went over 300 yards today and 4 touchdowns, and that hits right in the feels. Ooh. Thanks, DOD. We'll be back next week. It won't be me covering post-game. It'll be hopefully Joe Johnson, one of our other members at Vikings Territory, at Purple PTSD. We have message boards on VikingsTerritory.com. Please join us during the week. We're always overreacting to every bit of news. We're talking Stephon Diggs, trade rumors. We're talking anything to do with the Vikings. And we try to bring kind of a moderate perspective to even out those overreactions. But sometimes we get a little crazy over there. Outside of that, you can find me on About the Labor podcast. Comes out midweek. We shoot for Wednesdays. Sometimes they come out Thursdays. We are on the Big Heads Podcast Network. That's a great network. There's a lot of shows, a lot of sports shows, and then just some general stuff that's really great. So I would suggest checking them out as well. You can check me out on Twitter personally at KJOCon14. I do Vikings coverage throughout the week. I try not to think about the Minnesota Twins all the time. Sometimes it happens. And I stream video games sometimes. So give me a follow, give me a like, shoot me a comment, whatever. I can take it. Yeah, but we'll be back next week. Skull. Hopefully move to 4-2.